Hello and welcome to another episode of the Andy and Ollie Show. I'm Andy.
And I'm Ollie.
Oh, there he is, and there's Ollie. Great to see you, Ollie. Hope you're well. And we've got an incredible guest for you this week, and I'm very excited because I was fortunate enough to sample some of her beautiful wines at Van Expo in Paris. We've got Katie Jones from Domaine Jones in the Languedoc. Katie, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us on our show. It's great to see you, and I hope you're well.
I'm very well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. And just, I guess, starting off, obviously, for those that, and I was, as I say, I was very fortunate to taste some of your outstanding and beautiful wines, and I really do like to rave about them as well.
Yeah.
But I want, if we can sort of bring it back and find out your way into the Languedoc region initially, and then a little bit more about Domaine Jones and what people can find and what wines are there as well. And then we go from there, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, some people wonder how I actually managed to be living what looks like the dream lifestyle down here in the sunny south of France. So just for those who don't know, it's between Narbonne and Perpignan, right down on the edge of the Languedoc, just coming into the Roussillon. And I've been here for over 30 years now. So it was a move that was I was only meant to stay here for about 1 or 2 years, and it sort of got extended and extended because it's a really special place, and so much has sort of happened to me since I've been down here. But I suppose what brought me to France in the first place was my love of France. That is first and foremost. I've always felt that I was more French than English in a way, or I always wanted to be French. I wanted to speak French. I was actually quite shy when I was growing up, and speaking another language sort of gave me a bit more confidence and allowed me to be somebody different. So my love of France brought me over to work in Paris, even more than 30 years ago, as my first job. It wasn't very romantic. It was selling air cleaners to cafes to get the tobacco smoke out. So
Nice.
and from there, I then went back to the UK. I spoke fluent French, and I got a job for a wine importer called
Oh,
Thierry's.
nice.
Yeah, it doesn't actually exist
Cool.
anymore, but it was founded by Thierry Caban. And for me, it was like the most French I could get, but being in the UK. So half the staff were French. They used to smoke Gauloise after the tastings, and we'd all like eat together on a big table. And it was wonderful. And that sort of got me started my wine knowledge. I did a couple of qualifications with the WSET, and then I just thought, I really want to go back to France. It's like that is where I want to be. So I actually went on holiday and visited some of the people we were representing through Thierry's, and basically ended up in this village called Tuchon, which is just 900 people. And I just got here, and you know that feeling when it's just like, this is it.
Perfect.
Yeah. It was really one of those moments. It was summer, it was hot. The whole village were outside under the plane trees, having a village party. There was live music playing, and it just looked like really idyllic. And I think I sort of forgot that it was about an hour to any major town. It's an hour to Narbonne, it's an hour to Perpignan. And so I visited the Montage Cooperative, who we represented in the UK at that time, the major producer of Fitu. And they actually offered me a job immediately on the spot. And sort of, I don't think that sounds a bit wrong, but I was going to say, I don't think they'd ever seen like an English girl before that just rocked up in the village 30 years ago. And was obviously interested in the wine, and for them it was, I like knew all their customers, so it was sort of moving office in a way rather than changing completely my job. So I started working here in Tuchon. I don't quite know what the locals thought about me, but I settled into my job, and I thought I'd do it for a couple of years. And in the end, I ended up doing it for 15 years. So I worked at the village cooperative. So if you imagine Tushong, it's 900 people, and basically everybody is connected to the cooperative in some sort of way, because there's nothing else in the village. The only employment, the only industry is this big wine cooperative. So around here, it's just if I look out my window here, all I can see are like vineyards.
Perfect view.
Yeah, no, it is absolutely idyllic. So I did that for 15 years, and then I realized that I just needed a fresh challenge and something new. We were selling, lots of Fitu, mainly to supermarkets, and I just thought I really want to do something. The potential for winemaking here is enormous, and I'd particularly seen like the old vines that the wines that were made out of the old vines, which then got blended back into bigger blends. But the wine was absolutely outstanding. And I just thought it'd be really interesting just to have a domain or just a vineyard with old vines and see what quality comes out, and try and make a really top end Fitu and top end wines in an area around here that's mainly not known for. It's mainly known for sort of cooperative everyday drinking wines. So that's how the challenge that I set myself. That was in 2009. So in 2009, I bought a vineyard with my parents, who come from Ashby de la Zouge. I just have to mention Ashby de la
Big up to Ashby.
Ashby, yeah. And they just wanted somewhere to do a bit of gardening, and I don't think they quite knew what we were taking on. But I found a 2-hectare vineyard across the valley because I was still working in the village co-op. So I just thought it was more politically correct to get it in the neighbouring village. And bought it, just sold the grapes and farmed it until the following year, when my late husband, Jean-Marc, who was president of the cooperative. I never do things easily, by the way. I realize that if there's a difficult way to do things, Katie does it. He sort of pushed me and said, well, you've got those vines. Why don't you try and make some wine from it and just give it a go and see what happens? And, I'm here to help on the vineyard side. And obviously I've got the sales and marketing experience. And so that's how we started. And we started Domaine Jones in 2009. And we had 2 hectares, in Moray. And we made 8,000 bottles. And that was it. That was the beginning. And amazingly enough, I managed to sell some of it. And actual fact, I sold out in the first year. So we thought, we buy a couple more vineyards. So we bought a couple more vineyards, and the vineyards I buy are like ones that nobody else wants around here. They're old vines. They're sort of look a bit unloved.
Well, that's the beauty of it, isn't it? Every old vine looks like a piece of art, if you know what I mean. It tells a long time. It tells someone's pruned it, isn't it? Every year,
exactly.
It's changing direction. It looks like a lovely piece of art. Did you say it was in Moray?
Moray, yeah.
Yeah, I worked at Department 66 a long time ago.
With Richards.
Yeah, the vineyard manager was Bob, as I remember. He was English.
I know Bob.
Yeah, I worked for him for a long time ago before I went to Plumpton College.
I was going to say, did you go to Plumpton? Because they took on quite a few seasonal sort of labour through Plumpton. Oh,
Yeah,
right, so you know exactly.
Yeah, exactly. The vines are always so magnificently old. I've got lovely photos up there in the vineyards and working on the goblet vines as well, because it's so backbreaking, but immersive, and it's all the shit soil as well. It's very, very dark, black stone soils everywhere. So it's amazing. Sorry, I'll let you continue. Sorry.
No, it's really interesting to know that, because you can envisage what it was like, and that's what I fell in love with too. And the first vineyard was exactly that. It was lovely old vines. They were 70 years old. They were really gnarly. Like you said, each individual vine is different to its neighbor. So I think they're just like all individual characters, and the roots go a little bit deeper, so they manage to get the water, and they produce really complex, lovely wines too. I can't remember where I got up to now on my story.
Sorry.
No, it's wonderful. I can,
not at all.
It's amazing. I can probably pick up on a few bits, then pass to Ollie. But I think one of the things that I love about your story, Katie, as well, is obviously falling in love with a country and then ending up obviously enveloping yourself and becoming one of the locals, and you know, as you have, but also more so in that you.
I haven't actually.
Or you've not become one of the locals officially.
Officially. That's the next bit of the story.
But I was going to say as well, the love of old vine specifically, and you make really big reference to that on your website. If anyone hasn't seen it, domainejones.com, and have a look at the rationale around it. And I love the story around you basically, and it is a bit of a running joke where you pick out a vineyard that everyone hates and you take it, and but it's exploring obviously with Sarah Abbott's Old Vine conference as well coming through, and obviously giving more rationale and us as in the wine industry understanding the value of old vines. You're at the forefront of that, and obviously dealing with, you know, what are arguably the best quality producing things you can find. I always liken old vines to grandparents. They have the wisdom, they have the understanding, they understand what's been going on in the land. They've experienced droughts, they've experienced wet seasons. It's the youngsters you've got to look after, not the old ones, you know, sort of thing. And that's very much how sort of I think we're all three of us here, by the sounds of it, are all big fans of, because of the wisdom that you gain from it, but also because of the quality of wine that they can generate. And I think that's what I love from Domaine Jones as well. You know, there's a real orientation around what's actually gone before, and you can taste that in the wines as well. When people are sort of talking about what does age of vine produce, try Domaine Jones. You know, it shows it. This is a classic example, and it's a wonderful subset for Ollie talking more about his exploits, as well as, I'm going to say, just putting it in there, Katie, I'm going to come and see you in the first week in July as well. So
fantastic. That's
I will be
the old vines will be so excited. Like, that's really good.
Where's my invite? I never get invited to anything.
We just sneak that one in.
Yeah, I think my wife might have a slight issue with you joining us on that one, because
I'll sleep at the end of the bed, you know, like
this will not be a press trip, although I will be advertising.
Anything goes in Tucson, you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Exactly. So Katie, what going and having a look at it in depth in what you have now, where have you got to from? You mentioned obviously you had 2 hectares to start with. How big are you today, and what sort of have you got in terms of grape?
So today I've got 14 hectares altogether. But within that, there must be at least 20 different plots within those 14 hectares. And but basically they're all, well, 90% are over 50-year-old vines, and they go up to 120-year-old vines. Wow. And I think you mentioned something about them you not needing to be looked after like the youngsters. My vines are really high maintenance.
Are they?
They're an absolute nightmare. They're like,
you've got a nursing home out there, basically.
I have, but I call it my retirement home for old vines. It's like a sanctuary for old vines, because I'm organic as well. So I tell them that I'm going to feed them organic food. They don't have to produce very much. Like, they've probably been overworked for most of their lives down here for producing high yields, or as many as they could. And I'm just like, no, I don't want high yields from you anymore. I just want like a couple of bunches per
bring me your best.
Yeah, just want the best ones you can produce. But
and that must be very concentrated fruits.
It is really concentrated, I think, as an overall style, but there's a lovely freshness to the wines, and there's an elegance, and I think that's what you don't get from the younger vines in this area. A younger Carignan, there is absolutely no way it's going to produce something as elegant and as concentrated and deep as the old vines produce at Domaine Jones. Definitely. But to get to my 14 hectares, it's been a bit up and down. So I had 2 to start with, and everything was going well, and then unfortunately I got vandalized. I think it was in 2013. Not quite sure who did it, but I had my vats were emptied, so I lost my production of white wine quite early on. And rather than giving up and going home, which I don't think I've ever thought of doing, I just thought, okay, well, what should I do with this? And I actually sort of told lots of people about it, spoke to journalists, and just said, this happened. And I got quite a lot of publicity from it, which actually helped me sell my wines, created a bit of my story, and also meant that I could buy more vineyards. So that's when after 2014, I really started buying up lots of the older tiny parcels that nobody wanted, to build up Domaine Jones. So that was one phase, which everything's like in the village. I've spoken about it quite a lot before, but integrating in the village hasn't been my strong point at all.
Well, whoever vandalized it initially, hopefully it had completely the opposite effect if they were trying to like sort of subdue you or something, and you've gone on to bigger and better. So more for them, basically.
Yeah, I think I managed to turn it around, and although it wasn't particularly nice living with that sort of atmosphere, but yeah, I think I've got over it now, and it's part of my story. But yeah, I think I read Jean de Florette and Manon de Sauce books, which are French novels about living, well, village life and village families and village, and it does actually. For me, like my whole life is a bit of a book or a bit of a dream in a way. I don't have a bigger plan. And that sort of, I just felt I was like man on this horse over here, and that's what you get when you decide to live in a southern French village and be the outsider, because I'm not from the village. Marry the president of the cooperative, set up your own small domain in a very big cooperative village, especially when I previously had been selling their wine as well. So I obviously ruffled more than a few plume or feathers, and yeah, I probably got what I deserved, I suppose.
No, not at all. You showed the establishment what for, Katie, in my opinion.
And then so that really helped. And then unfortunately, I mentioned briefly, but my husband Jean-Marc died 18 months ago, and he was the person that really helped me do the vines, and like he did the vineyard bit, which meant I didn't have to do any of the hard work in the vineyards. And I did the sales and marketing, and it was a brilliant team. And so I've had to sort of reinvent myself again with a new team, new help, and just a new outlook on things. And he had his wine domain as well, so I kept Domaine Jones going, and we sold off with his children. We sold off his domain. But yeah, it hasn't been all plain sailing, I must say. But even, I don't know, it's just all part of life, I think. And the old vines really gave me comfort as well, which is a strange thing to say, but they really did. So I sort of love my old vines even more now, because they make me think of Jean-Marc, like every time I go out. And I can't say that I work in them anymore, but every time I go and take photos of them and do my rambles in the morning. So yeah, it's been tough, really tough. And I think a lot of people would have given up and just gone, I was going to say gone home, but no, I love it so much. There's still a great attachment to the area and even to the village, because it's so beautiful.
Well, I was going to say, like, enormous amount of respect to you picking up vineyards that people didn't particularly want anymore, especially old heritage vines. Like heritage vines get to a point where they're producing less, and they get a bit sad, and they need a lot more care, as you said they do.
They do.
And they do give back, even though they're old, as you say.
They do. Yeah. Like, it's like old people, like Andy said as well. It is like that. They are like old people, and they have so much knowledge and wisdom. Yeah.
But no, so the wines that you produce, are the varieties spread out, or are they in sort of patches? Do you have one variety in one area, or is it spread
Yeah.
over?
So they are spread out. It's sort of one vineyard is a particular grape variety, just planted one grape, but there's always a bit of a mixture because they were planted like 100 years ago. So they would have been grafted by the village grafter. Each village had somebody who was specialized in grafting the vines, and he would just go to another vineyard that already existed and take shoots from there and graft onto the roots. So what was the question?
Great
So the
varietals, I think, in
varieties.
location.
Yeah. So so at Domaine Jones, we've got like 14 hectares, but spread over about 20 plots, and each individual plot is just one single grape variety, mainly. But what I love about it is it's the traditional grape variety. It's like Carignan, and it's like Carignan Gris. So grey Carignan, which is, I think,
Never heard of it.
Google it. No, it's so unusual. I think there's about 5 hectares in the world or something. It's mainly been ripped up because people don't like it. Like you mentioned, I really like vineyards that are challenged that other people don't want. And the Carignan Gris was actually given to me. There's 800 vines and they're over 100 years old.
Wow.
And they produce, it takes ages to ripen. So it actually ripens after the red grapes, but I make it's a grey grape.
It must do quite well though. It must do
Yeah.
really well because
They
it has a
match.
really long maturation period of getting really mature. It must be quite a complex grape variety to work with.
It is, because but the end result is a lovely texture and tannins that it has from it, like from the Carignan sort of. But it's such a difficult grape to work with, like if you're in a cooperative system, because you can't just wait for one little plot of white grapes to mature. But I think it's a great grape for the future because this year's vintage is only at 12% and it was picked in September, late September, and the alcohol is still only 12%, which is very unusual down here to get a white grape variety like that.
What was the problem with last year? Was it just it was a wet year? Was it didn't get enough sunlight hours, or?
No, there wasn't a particular problem. Sorry if I made it.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Yeah. No. Like every year, I haven't had a really difficult harvest. Last year, it was very dry, so we had drought conditions. So some of the vineyards did suffer.
Because they stop producing sugars, don't they, when they get too hot?
Yeah, and they just shut down. So we did have some, and we had a couple where the leaves, not the old vines, but I have got a younger vineyard, the leaves were sort of dropping off before the grapes were ripened. But in actual fact, so we harvested earlier, and on some of the red grapes, and I actually prefer the style of wine that we've made. It's just fresher, lighter. So I will be picking earlier again this year too. And then I also made some Blanc de Noir, which I've never made before.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, because I took over one of Jean-Marc's vineyards from his domain, and it was his favorite vineyard, and I just didn't want to see it disappear, even though it was like younger. So, and it was Carignan. It's like, it's not that young Carignan. What am I going to do with it? And I thought, oh, I'll have a go with making a Blanc de Noir. So it's turned out really well, actually. And it's 11.5%. Really fresh. Just looks,
That's
it's
cool.
so clear, just like water. Really interesting.
That's nice appealing ABV actually for a Blanc de Noir. That's very approachable and drinkable. That's a lovely sort of ABV to aim for.
And are you aging that, Katie, or are you drinking it? Is it a style
No,
straight away?
I think no. I bottled it on Monday, so it's all freshly bottled, and it's coming over to the Wine Society. Actually, they've snapped up some of it, so it will be over soon. But otherwise, I'm going to see how it does age because I've got no idea. But at the moment, it's just a lovely sort of fresh, easy style of white. It doesn't have the complexity, shall we say, of the old vine wines. But again, every vintage I have to do something different and interesting. I think I have a really low boredom threshold. So it's like every vintage I'm just trying something new. So
Well,
yeah,
that's what winemaking's about. You always got to do something new. You can't just
I
keep
think
same
so.
old, same old. You got to keep changing it up. And
Yeah.
you'd be surprised.
This is what I keep telling Ollie, Katie, because Ollie's obviously head winemaker in Essex at Newhall, and he's got what is considered to be very old vines in the UK. You know, it's UK old rather than very old. And I keep saying that he just needs to jazz it up a little bit. You know, just play around with it. I know it's not necessarily owned by him in general, but it doesn't matter. Just have a
Yeah,
little play with it.
I live next door to it. It's out there. I see it every day. You know.
Very jealous of you both. Katie, just to go back to the Carignan Gris that you've got.
Yeah.
What sort of ortolist do you get? Sort of a smokiness from
Yes,
that sort of wine? Yeah,
you do, just because it's really complex, and it's a really, for me, it's just Carignan Gris. It's sort of appley as well. You've got like stewed apples on it, a bit smoky. It's not particularly on the fruit driven at all. It's definitely a gastronomic wine. So it's a great wine for pairing with, I say sometimes, like difficult things like asparagus or artichokes, or even like mackerel or sort of oily fish too.
that's what I was thinking actually. I was just picturing oily fish in summer having a glass of that, because I was thinking that it's probably got plenty of body so it can cut through, but it just cuts through that sort of oiliness. I was thinking even like if you before dinner have olives, as long as you're eating something sort of like slightly salty or oily, it would work quite nicely. Yeah,
exactly. But it's sort of, it's different, and that's what I like to do. It surprises people because you can't compare it to anything else. It's just Carignan Gris. So
well,
I've never heard of it as a variety.
I know.
Sorry.
Well, it's okay. I'm gonna send you a little sort of tasting note. No, I'll bring a bottle. Don't worry, Ollie. If they're not sold out by then, Ollie, maybe Katie might have sold out by then. Katie, we'll have a little deal on the side. You're sold out.
yeah, because I only make like 800 bottles a year. So but no, it's freshly bottled. We'll be fine. We'll bring you some back. Ollie.
Are you coming to the Wine Society tasting? Are you coming to that?
No, I'm not. I did one last year, but I'm not. When is theirs?
There's one coming up in, I think I want to say June.
June, no.
It's their 150th anniversary, isn't it? So
they're doing lots of things, aren't they? So no, I think I'm not in that. So I'll wait till next year.
Damn, I would have been able to try it then.
Yeah, no.
Katie, I've got to ask as well, off the bottle you've got, Hairy Grenache. Where did that come about? I mean, I love Along Came Jones, which I love the bottle name.
Yeah.
Again, probably not very regionally acceptable, I guess.
No, exactly. Yeah, it's not really catering for the local market, I don't think. But the name came about just talking to a friend, and he was like, you know, there's a song called Along Came Jones. And then we thought about it more, and it was like, yeah, actually that really fits in with Along Came Jones, and look what she did. And the hairy Grenache is actually the Liadona Pelote. So Pelote means hairy, and Liadona is Catalan, but I don't know the direct translation of it. But I just thought that's too complicated, and I always like to keep things really simple to explain my wines and to make people remember the wines as well. And like I bought this plot of vines and I thought it was Grenache, and then I realized it had hairy leaves, and the hairs on the back of the leaves mean that it's actually this a sort of poor cousin of Grenache called the Liadona Pelote. And it was planted when, for a while, they weren't allowed to plant any Grenache in Toucham. It's a bit of a strange story, but they weren't allowed to plant Grenache because there was overproduction of one of the sweet wines, Vendu Naturel. And to curb the production of the sweet wines made from Grenache, they said you can't plant Grenache in this area. But you can plant Liadona Pelote, which is the poor cousin to Grenache, but this is a bit confusing, but you can't make a sweet wine from it. You have to make a dry wine or add it to your fitu. And so people who wanted to plant Grenache could only plant the hairy Grenache. And most people, when that ban was lifted, ripped up all of their hairy Grenache because they didn't particularly like it, because it made a lighter style of wine in color and in alcohol. And so most of it has disappeared. And I realized that I probably got one of the last hairy Grenache vineyards in the village. And so for 2 years, I was like, I need to sell this as hairy Grenache. Like, I've got a great story. And I talk about it on my rambles and sort of say hairy Grenache. And people immediately picked up on hairy Grenache. And I tried to make the wine for 2 years, but I was making it like the other wines. So I was leaving the skins in for like 10 days. And it went through a lovely fruity stage and then really tailed off and was just left with no fruit and just really dry tannins. So I didn't do it for the first 2 years, but then I decided to just do a 4 or 5 day maceration. So it's a really short maceration on the skins, and it just gives it enough color and it keeps that lovely juicy fruit on it. So it gave me a really different style of wine, but one that I then adapted to my Grenache as well. So my Grenache now I only leave for 4 or 5 days on the skins as well, just to get that lovely fruit and the juiciness stays in it. So yeah, so I sort of adapted it around my market, well, my idea that I had to market or sell the wine to begin with. I persevered with how to make it on the hairy Grenache.
Amazing. I love that. I mean, like, we're all about being education as well on this podcast. So that was a true education for me and for Ollie and for hopefully everyone else that's going to listen as well. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, when you come down, you can come and have a look at the hairy leaves.
Absolutely. And in terms of your sort of export range as well, where do you normally sell it to? Obviously, you sell locally, of course, but
no, I don't.
Don't you? Is it all external?
I think I've sold 1 bottle of rosé.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Like locally, as into to locals.
Yes.
But I do have a tasting room here, and I do get lots of visits from the UK, Sweden, Scandinavia, basically where my wines are sold on export markets. People then sort of seek me out and come down, and we've got a tasting room, and I've got so many little tiny sort of wines. The range is quite extensive because I make about 40,000 bottles in total from my vineyards. And I must have about 16 different wines.
Yeah,
so it's quite, and it's ones that I'll do just for 1 year and then stop doing them, and then so there's quite a few. So I am meant to be narrowing down that range a little bit, but I'm finding it very difficult to stop any of them. But I have a new wine coming out as well called Les Parcelles, which is going to be a blend of certain grape varieties and certain plots or vineyards, as in parcelle, to try and narrow down the range a little bit as well.
Yeah, 16 different styles of wine is tricky.
It is tricky, isn't it?
Yeah, we've at Newhall we have 18 different varieties. So they used to do the exact same thing. They used to do individual wines of every single variety, and then they had to narrow it down into blends.
I think in the end, I still keep some of my, like there's some I just can't give up, like the Carignan Gris. I just, the vines would never forgive me if I just mix them up with something else again, because they've always been hidden like all their life. They've never been given like the limelight as a single grape variety. They've just been picked and put into red wine probably. But yeah, I think you do go in phases, and yeah, the time has come to have a look at the range. And
No.
Yeah, well, I say that I won't do it. I'll probably come up with something new in the harvest and add that to the range. And yeah.
What I love, Katie, as well, is on the website, you've got a countdown, basically a live countdown as to when basically is the cutoff for UK deliveries as well, because you do sort of batch deliveries, don't you? Obviously, unfortunately, with various political constraints that we have these days, there's some problems. But I think that's fantastic because it's then. So for anyone that's listening and hasn't been to the website, go and have a look at the website. If you haven't seen it, as of right now, it's 47 days, 7 hours, 27 minutes. Oh, sorry, now 26 minutes and 59 seconds until
very precise.
Yeah,
but it's never delivered on time, so don't.
No, don't tell them that. Otherwise, you'll get very late orders, Katie.
Exactly. It's a guide, a very precise guide. But yeah, it's a nightmare. Basically, doing direct sales after Brexit is just virtually impossible now, and it's yeah, it's not being made easy at all. And now we need to have an importer. You need to ship the wines through an importer. So I'm working on it to work out. I've got a couple of ideas of how not to get around it, but how to work with the system and how to get my wines over to the UK. And I've got some great distributors anyway who have some of the range, but obviously they can't have 16 wines, Katie Jones wines in the range.
I think they should do though.
Yeah. Quite nice. First, I just thought to open a shop called Domaine Jones.
Oh, we can talk about that offline. That's something that the Andy and Ollie show can definitely talk about.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah.
Yes, I love it. Love it.
Yeah. No, I'd love to.
I'm gonna put you on the spot, Katie, as well before I pass to Ollie, and just say, is there a special bottle that is it the Carignan Gris that is your favourite, or is there not really a favourite? I know I'm basically asking you to choose between grandparents now, effectively, but
it's difficult to have a favourite, but there's two. If I can have two, I really like the style of Grenache. I know three actually. I really like the style of Grenache that I've done, just having a shorter maceration and picking a bit earlier. The Fitu remains a classic as well. That is my main, it's the biggest seller from what I do. It's the most popular wine. It's Carignan Grenache Syrah. But there's a lovely elegance to it and a lovely freshness to it. And it's quite surprising. People who haven't tried Fitu for a while come back and try mine. They're like, wow, it's changed. Something's been going on in the Fitu appellation. So I'm really proud of that one. And then the other one is the Grenache Gris, not Carignan Gris, but Grenache Gris. And it's a wine that I've aged in barrel for at least 4 years. Wow. And it ends up being a bit like a Solera system in that I bottle a barrel and then top it up. And so it's non-vintage. And it got 96 points in decanter at the end of last year, which I'm really proud about. But that's also so cool. Because it was a bit of an accident. We had an overly oaked barrel that we just left to one side and then tasted it a couple of 4 years later and thought, wow, actually, this is so interesting. It's such a complex wine. It's not really wine, it's more
sherry,
like dry sherry.
That sounds so interesting.
And it's just so complex. There's so much going on in it. And that's one where I just looked at it. I thought, did I make this wine? It's like, yeah.
And I was going to say, on your website, can I adopt a vine, please? I want that right now.
You may.
What is in the listing? What's up for adoption?
Well, the easiest way is on the website, because I don't know it personally who's still left, is there's a filter that says available or not available. So
cool. Okay.
It's the last filter, but if you just click on that will come up. Then you've got all the pictures of the ones that are still available. They're probably the ugliest ones, but it really
that's the ones that need the most love, though. That's the ones.
Exactly. They're the ones that need looking at. Once I had somebody who said, give me one that's got a problem, because I like looking after old vines that need that extra help. So yeah, no, but that scheme has worked extremely well. And I think it brings me a lot closer to my customers. There's no obligation to buy the wine at all. It's really adopt a vine and you live with that vine almost for a whole year, and you'll see it through the different seasons. You can come and meet it and say hello. You can have a glass of wine with it. And obviously it likes it if you buy some of its wine, but that's not what it's about. And it also helps me to maintain these high maintenance vines that otherwise they would be ripped up. Quite definitely they would have been ripped up already. So yeah, it's and it's fun. And I think when I work, I have to have fun. So that was one way that I entertain myself down here.
That's a very good idea. Scheme. It's a brilliant scheme. And for those that haven't again seen it, check domainejones.com. You'll see the Adopt an Old Vine, and you can basically handpick your beautiful vine. I've just checked, there's still some available, but there's not that many left, so you have to be quick. Etienne, I've got my eye on Etienne, Ollie, so keep your hands off that one.
All right.
And you get a plethora of gifts as it mentions, but also And for those that don't realize and don't have any background or listening in, and why we're so conscientious around old vines, not just because effectively I've gone through the fact that they're part of our family tree, but also the fact that there was huge, especially in Europe, in a lot of different regions, huge rip outs that took place where they've been scrubbed up because, as we've mentioned before, you can replace them with younger vines, you can produce more fruit, but not necessarily quality, and in fact, not quality generally, in terms of it just hasn't had that exposure and experience. But obviously, winemaking is in the region of producing effectively finances. Everyone has to run on finance and be profitable to maintain their livelihood, and it is a livelihood. And don't forget, this is agricultural, industry. It is part of farming, and that is a very difficult, at times very unprofitable process as well. And therefore, we've also got to be conscious of the fact that we're not sort of having a go at people ripping them out necessarily, but we do really need to concentrate on the ones that are left to preserve them. They showcase everything. They showcase the varietal. They're so different in orientation when you taste them as well, young versus old, and it's fascinating. And it teaches us a lot about climate, soil, terroir, everything around the landscape that they're within. So that's why we sort of, in this episode, which is wonderful, Katie, thank you. We've been sort of ramming the drum, or banging the drum a little bit harder on old vines as well, because they are beautiful, constructed, and it's such a fabulous story that you've got in terms of how you've created and expanded. And as I say, I'll be doing a sort of an add-on for those that are keen to find out what happens when I go and see Katie in July. We'll have a Andy meets Katie moment. Apologies, Ollie, but maybe we'll FaceTime you or something, Ollie. There you go.
You haven't even seen me yet. You haven't even seen me.
We spent the whole of Provine together. I don't know what you're talking about, but
all right, fine.
Katie, it's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you ever so much for giving us all your time. It's been fabulous hearing more about Domaine Jones. I recommend everybody have a look at it. Please do go and have a look. Find out a bit more about the area. You're not that far from. I mean, flight-wise, we can go to Carcassonne, go to Perpignan, drive from there very easily from the UK. Obviously, and everyone in France will know the region. But please have a look. We do go to, I think it's up to 14 different countries, this podcast, just sort of tapping ourselves on the head a little bit. Well done, Ollie. So that's not a bad achievement. So for those that aren't in the UK and France as well, don't feel like I'm leaving you out. Worldwide, you can get to go to Domaine Jones, and Katie will showcase all the wines, which I can also say are outstanding, having tasted a number of them. I don't think I've tasted 16, but I've tasted quite.
We'll save that for July, shall we?
Exactly, quite a number, and I look forward to seeing you in July, Katie. But thank you ever so much for your time. It's been our pleasure to have you on their show.
No, I've loved it. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me on. It's been great.
Lovely to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
See you in July. Thanks, Katie.
Okay.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.